Hi, this is Vinnie Favale.
And welcome to the FSF Popcast, your home for the all-nerdy, no-dirty interviews with people in our sci-fi and pop culture world. Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Addicts. Our guest today is the co-founder of Comedy Central. He's been an executive in charge of production for shows like the David Letterman Show. He's been involved with Stephen Colbert's events on CBS television. And he was the president of talent development and live events for CBS as well. He's an author. He's an avid Beatles fan, and he's been a podcast host. Safe to say, Vinnie Favale has done a little bit of everything over his career. And he's here today on Pop Culture Addicts to talk about just those very everythings. Welcome to the show, Vinnie.
Great to be here, guys.
Thank you for joining us. We're excited.
Boy, sometimes when we go, we look at people, we look at their IMDb list. I found so many articles about you. There's a lot of stuff in the world that has been written about Vinnie Favale. And I've come to the conclusion, you are a busy man, sir.
You've come to the conclusion that I wrote all those articles.
Hey, if you did and you have that many pen names, more power to you, because then you were busier than I thought.
One of the things I learned working with Letterman and Howard Stern, and like, press is key, like the more, the hopefully good press to promote something. And when I did my musical, I think a lot of it was generated from that. I was just like trying to get as much free publicity as possible to get the word out. Right.
Well, actually, that leads me right into my first question for you, because, with all the things that you've done, you also found time to write, as you mentioned, a musical called HereAfter.
Right.
So this is a two-part question, okay? First off, if you would, please explain to our listeners about the musical and its inspiration. And then secondly, from my understanding, you're not a musician. How do you write a musical while not being a musician?
I know, right? That's crazy. I have some good role models. The quick answer, as quick as I could make it, on the musical front, does Broadway cover Pop Culture Addiction for you guys, or musicals in general? Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm a huge musical fan, so yes.
Oh, great. Okay, excellent. I am as well. And growing up in New York, I've had access to like some of the greatest shows of all time. So I love musical theater. Love rock and roll. I want to say it was in the like 2004, 5, that time period. I wrote a song. I had been writing songs more as a hobby for fun stuff. I don't know if you heard that Howard Stern found one of my old songs called Restless, Restless. And it was a horrible song, an admittedly horrible song that I wrote with my buddy Taj Gizmondo. And I was hip to the fact that how bad it was. So I gave it to Howard, and he had this incredible contest where people like Robert Goulet and William Shatner, they would win $1,000. I don't know why those guys submitted versions to produce a version of my song that didn't sound horrible, right? And through that process, I met so many great musicians, and I realized like the beauty of music, how you could take a crappy song, but if you say, make this crappy song sound like the Beatles, in the hands of a good musician, they could turn that into a Beatlesque type number. Okay.
Right.
So that's kind of like an important background to this. So it was around that time period when, I saw one of those memorial trees on the side of the road. Heartbreaking. You knew an accident happened there. By Memorial Tree, it's really flowers. Right. It's usually on the side of the road, not always a tree, but it's just like a roadside memorial. And I it was in my neighborhood, and I read in the paper, oh boy, there was a teenage boy who died, 19. And, it was really sad. I read the story, and I had my own loss growing up with loss of my brothers, one oldest and youngest, when I was in 15, 16. So I knew what that was like. And it moved me to write a song called 19, a wishful song, a song like, oh, wouldn't it be great if this boy who died, or anyone who died, could communicate to their loved ones, look, I can't give you the secrets of what happens when you die. You're not supposed to know that, but just go on with your life. I'll be fine. Just one little thing, And so I wrote the song, and I'm like, and I got one of the Restless bands to record it. Now I had access to someone, and by writing it, I write a very simple melody. I'm really good with the lyrics, and the melodies have to be earworms because I have to be able to la-di-da it to you. I mean,
Sure.
Even if you can't play an instrument, if you love the Beatles and you have a decent voice, you could sing the song that carries the melody. So, and by the way, that's how Mel Brooks wrote The Producers. I mean, Mel Brooks is a classic example of the guy who, first of all, his lyrics are brilliant because they're comedic, and he loves music, he knows music, and a guy like Mel Brooks can afford to have a great musical arranger, which ultimately I did when I did my musical. So long story short, I had the song, it came out great, and I'm like, well, what does a 50-something guy do with a rock and roll song about like a boy who died trying to talk to his mother, right? There's no world for that, And then musical theater, I was like, oh, wait a second. Oh my God. Like I saw Rent on Broadway, and I remember seeing it thinking, I am surrounded by the bridge and tunnel crowd. I don't say that pejoratively, but by mothers and grandmothers and kids from Queens and Brooklyn. They've come to see this musical and they're loving it, right? If I sat those people down and just played them this new album by a group called Rent, like they wouldn't get through 3 songs, right? Because it's just the music would be too heavy. But if you surround it with this beautiful story and these incredible performers, it's not a rock and roll edgy album anymore. It's a show, and that's just part of it. And that's when I realized, oh, wait, that's where a song like this could live. Maybe it's a story about how we deal with the loss of a loved one, something I have experience with. So and with my partner, Frankie Keene, she and I wrote it together. We came up with this very simple premise. 3 women who don't know each other find themselves in a group reading with a psychic who's supposed to be good. Like, you don't know if he's good or not. They're all supposed to be the best, right? Like you got to go see my psychic, and over the course of the show, the spirits organically come up through flashbacks, but then they linger. And then that's basically the premise of the show. And it takes place in real time. And I structured it like a chorus line. I was like looking at some of the great shows out there and figuring out, okay, these are kind of mirror characters. And that's how it came to be. And, it was the early days of Kickstarter. Remember that? The good old days of Kickstarter when you weren't annoying your friends and family. And we wrote the book, we wrote the music, we had some really great demos, we had done some readings, and we felt, now the thing about a musical is like you have to gather like a lot of troops together. In my case, it was like 10 actors, in a band. So we did some readings. We thought, you know what, this is worth it. So I did a Kickstarter and raised a good chunk of money, but I still had to put a lot of my own money into the show. And we had an amazing off-Broadway run. And then that was it. It was licensed in Spanish. It's played in Argentina. And, it's out there now, and hopefully it'll come back again. So that's how that all happened.
That's really cool. And I agree that with Rent, if you're not familiar with the story, if you're not seeing the characters, there's no way anybody's going to make it through the opening number of that album even.
Right, exactly. Like, could you imagine, like, even your coolest aunt, right? Or grandmother or whoever that loves Broadway, that goes to see all the shows. If you just said, hey, listen to this song, I think you're right. You'd lose them halfway through it.
Right. I mean, they'll make it through Seasons of Love because that's the earworm. That's the one that catches everybody.
That's the candy, but it takes a while. I mean, that opening numbers, it's very, very intense. But oh my God, how great is that?
I know, I love that show.
And did you like the movie?
I did.
I love the movie.
Tim is not a musical fan, so this is totally out of his ballpark.
Tim cured his addiction of musicals.
I am out in left field looking at the bleachers, completely lost. So
okay, well, we'll rate it into other things, but let's just put a cap on that. We love Rent, we love musicals.
Oh yeah, so there's more musicals involved.
No, you can keep talking musicals. It's fine. I am by no means. By the way,
my favorite musical of all time, and it's also because it's just coincidentally it happens to be one of my favorite movie of all time is Nine, the original Nine, based on Fellini's 8.5. Yeah. I saw that with Raul Julia in 1982, and it's still an incredible score.
That's really cool. I mean, I I grew up in a musical theater family. My grandma was an opera singer. My parents met doing community theater.
Nice.
I did theater in high school, but my first musical experience was as a 5-year-old. I'm the youngest of 4, and my parents took us to Toronto, and we went and saw Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, that's such a
in the
great
Pantages
show.
Theater at 5 was horrendous. It was terrifying. But then when the motion picture came out in 2004 and I watched it again as a 12-year-old, and I'm like, wait a minute. I like this story.
You retroactively fell in love with the show.
Exactly.
So, I've been to several musicals. My wife is a big fan of musicals.
What have you seen?
So I've seen Phantom. I actually enjoyed it. And the main theme of Phantom, the guitar work in that is just amazing. And so to me, I actually don't mind that song. That's it, like, when everybody asks me what's one song that people wouldn't expect you to like, I'm like, Phantom of the Opera. Here it is. Because most everybody who knows me knows that I am not a fan of musicals. I unapologetically hate Cats.
Cats
it's
is
a
actually,
rough show.
It's not that. Yeah, it's not as bad as it should be as a musical. The movie, I can't speak to that. I haven't seen it.
I didn't see the movie because I didn't feel like reinserting bamboo shoots under my fingernails.
So the movie has its upsides. Like, I love that they sort of gave it a plot. It wasn't just the song lyrics of a book of poetry. There was an underlying plot with McCavity's plan. They kind of spelled out what he was doing a little bit more. Other than that, it was atrocious.
Yeah, see, I've gone to let's see, Miss Saigon, Les Mis.
That was good. Basically, Les Mis is great.
Les Mis is great.
I spent 3.5 hours looking at my wife going, what's happening? Why are they singing it?
Really? Is all this happening just because of a loaf of bread? What's going on?
Yeah, I was completely lost in Les Mis. Yeah. It was bad. See, I have a problem with people talking to each other when they could just like talk, and so that's probably even more why I hate Cats, because now it's people in cat outfits doing it. It's just like,
yeah. In the movie Les Mis, I wish Russell Crowe would have talked. I mean, they ruined that movie. There's just hire singers. You don't need actors to sell that movie. I
mean, Anne Hathaway did a fantastic job as Fantine, but Russell Crowe,
yeah. That wasn't good. Like if you so Tim, if you saw the Les Mis, Kathleen, you probably saw this, the Les Mis concert on PBS where they do the show not in costume, they're just singing the songs. You would like that. That's really cool.
I recommend looking up the 25th anniversary one.
Yeah, right. That's
my wife used to have it back in the day on something or other, Les Mis on CD.
Yeah, that was a triple CD set. That was a huge.
Yeah, she had that, and we lost it in a move. Not my fault, by the way. Not my fault. But we lost it in a move, and I was not sad.
I think the 25th anniversary of Les Mis is the one with Nick Jonas in it too.
No, Jonas is a later one, I think. Oh, you're right. It's been so long. I think the 10th anniversary one is the one that has the original guy in it.
The original Jean Valjean.
9 was a disaster as a movie. Horrible. I thought they did. How could my favorite? That was a mashup of my favorite movie, Fellini's 8.5, and my favorite musical 9. How could you go wrong? And it was horrible.
I went and saw Les Mis twice in Kalamazoo. It was at Western Michigan University's Miller Auditorium. They've got this really cool, or they did, when I lived on that side of the state, they had a volunteer usher program. So my aunt worked for the school, so she could volunteer to be an usher for shows, and then she got my mom and my brother involved in it, and they could bring a guest usher. So I mean, you're handing out pamphlets for the show, but then you get to sit and you get to watch the show.
Oh my God.
So I went and saw Les Mis twice. I saw Jersey Boys, saw Wicked.
Great. I didn't like Wicked. I don't know why. It's hard to get into. And I'm not a fan of Adina. How did John Travolta pronounce her name? Adina Menzel. Her
Adele
voice.
Dazeem.
Yeah, Adele Dazeem. I feel like I should. That's one of the shows where I feel like I should. I mean, you guys probably encounter that all the time as pop culture addicts. You know, whether it's a movie or a TV show. Sometimes when the hype is so big, I'm almost afraid. Like I haven't watched yet. What's the big show on Apple TV? The soccer show.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah, I'm actually afraid to watch it. I know it's going to be great, but I'm afraid because
I get that.
Yeah,
because I was before I started it.
Yeah.
So I'm like you. When something gets so hyped,
yeah,
I'm afraid that I'm going to go into it with too high of expectation, and that I'm
and be horribly
there's no way
disappointed.
that. Yeah, and there's zero way. There's no way that it could ever hit the mark, and that some way throughout this the time that I spent watching it or having the conversation and getting to the point of watching it, that I'm going to be then thusly horribly disappointed. And I'm always afraid of that. But I will say it's worth the watch. It really
also,
is.
on Apple TV that's worth the watch is Schmigadoon.
Yeah, see, that's another one that I'm just like, I feel like that thing has been done before. Didn't ABC do something that was really cool, it seemed at the time, but then I lost interest in that. What was that one called?
I don't remember.
Musical. It was a musical thing too. But is it good? It's not over the top?
Okay, so here's the thing. I actually liked it.
Oh,
I hate musicals and I like it. There's enough, it's a comedy, so there's enough comedy in it to offset it. And there's a couple of the songs where I had to go back and listen to the song again because I was laughing so hard the first time.
Really?
Yeah, that I had to go back and listen to it to see what I had actually missed the first time through.
All right.
Well, and as a musical fan, though, I mean, there are so many parodies and drawbacks to other shows that, I mean, they straight up make fun of some other musicals, but in the best way possible.
Actors from musicals, in the show, people who can actually sing.
Yeah, Kristen Chenoweth is in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really.
I have to check that out.
Actually, really well
great
done.
Actors. Yeah. All right. Well, then I need to do that one.
An entire musical number about corn pudding. Of all things.
An entire musical number about sex education.
That is true.
That's the winner.
That one is the winner.
Really?
Yeah.
One show that I hadn't watched. I didn't have the time. I'm not aggressively not watching it. It just happened that I'd heard about it. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this is the best show ever. Bob's Burgers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's phenomenal. That
show is hilarious.
Like, how was that on for so many years and I didn't watch it? I didn't see it. So I love that. I still watch The Simpsons.
Oh,
there you go. Excellent.
So still on the musical topic a little bit. We had talked pre-show about having interviewed Art Bell recently, but my husband actually found a video of you and Art Bell talking about Mel Brooks, who we've already talked about a little bit. Yeah. So talking about the producers, why do you think that it was so remarkable, especially for its time? And why should Tim watch that one?
Are we talking like the movie, right? The original movie?
Either the original. Well, I actually
so
like the remake version more than the original.
The remake, the remake is actually the full-fledged musical, right? The remake, the one with Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually reading Mel Brooks's biography now. Highly recommend it. It's so good. It's just a great premise because there's some truth to it. And working in musical theater, the desperation. It's like, wow, we have to get all these people to invest in the show. And wait a second, when the producer, who's Zero Mostel, like just his portrayal of Max is so great. But I think you should probably start with I think you should watch both versions. I would start with the original only because Gene Wilder and Zero Mostel. How do you go wrong with that? And it was Mel Brooks's second film, I think, or first film. It was, and it's amazing how, it's only like it was like 25 years from Hitler, the time span. This was in the mid 60s, and he's making a movie where obviously he's making fun of Hitler, but still, sometimes people right now you couldn't even get away with it. I don't think because people couldn't look beyond the swastika. They was, well, it still has a swastika, so we will not allow this. As even though they're making fun of it like in a real Busby Berkeley kind of way, right on the stage when the woman formed that the symbol, but. Yeah, you really should see it because it really is funny. And if you're a Beatles fan, it was George Harrison's one of his favorite films.
Ooh. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, passionate about it, loved it.
See, and I
did not know that.
I convinced my husband to watch it with me. He tried to watch the original with Gene Wilder, but he's not a Gene Wilder fan. He struggled with that one. He's not a Matthew Broderick fan either, but Nathan Lane won him over.
Oh, good. Yeah, Nathan Lane truly is when he does the Betrayed at the end when he's in jail. And the great thing about Mel Brooks is talk about like Schmigadoon. Mel Brooks knows all the tropes of Broadway as well and all the little tricks, and that's kind of the recounting number. It's not in every show, but the big number that kind of calls back all the things that came before. And Nathan Lane, when he does that, oh my God,
I know, I love that movie.
Incredible. Yeah, it's really. I'm going to go watch it after this now. You got me all excited.
It's so funny. I have not. I did not see it live.
I did. I saw it on Broadway with the originals.
Oh, my brothers went and saw it in Toronto in it would have been 2002.
Who was in it when they saw it?
Oh, I don't remember who was in it then.
Because so many stars were doing it. It's like one of those shows, like The Odd Couple, where I think it was Martin Short had done it for a while, and Jason Alexander.
Yeah, I don't remember who was in it when they saw it, but it was so funny. So my brothers come back from Toronto with the, Mom, have you heard of this musical? And my mom's like, no. Okay, well, I found it on DVD and we're gonna watch it. It's like, oh boy.
Oh no. And advisory.
Right? Yeah. Like my brothers were in their 20s and it was what on earth did you just have me watch? Like my mom was both amused and appalled.
That's great.
Yeah. But it's become a family favorite and somehow gets quoted frequently and randomly sung throughout the house because that's the kind of family that we are. We do sing at each other, Tim. I don't understand why you think that's weird.
At dinner. Right. They don't talk. They sing.
No, hey, to each their own. I mean, I'll sing Beatles or Pearl Jam at you, but I don't know about that.
Yes, Beatles.
So, all right. So, Vinnie, earlier we talked about how you spent 20 plus years at CBS, overseeing, a lot of the happened on late night, whether it was Letterman or Colbert. But we also, in our research found that you did a lot of work with Howard Stern. You guested often on his show as well. Now, depending on who you talk to, Stern is either the savior of modern talk radio or the devil in the flesh. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of middle ground when it comes to Howard. So what's something that you wish people knew or understood about Howard that you don't think most people do?
Yeah, I wish they all had the benefit of seeing him off the air or knowing him off the air. Just a great guy and just could see the wrestling, the pro wrestling aspect of the show. Things that were like, there were even a couple of times where it was one thing happened, I forget, but it was pretty bad, and where I was accused. Someone like Letterman allegedly had said something negative about Howard in a pre-tape thing, which wasn't true. It was like Sal called it in and lied to Howard, but got Howard angry, and Howard started yelling at me. Sure. When he's really mad at Dave, but he's yelling at me about Dave, you tell him this and that. And my wife was the days of the buzzer, the beeper, not even the phone. And it was vibrating. Are you okay? Okay. And he would break out into a smile during, like, he'd be like, yeah, right, angry. And then he'd smile at me like, okay. I knew like he was turning it on. And then after the show, it was like, that was great. And I'm like, well, good for you. I'm still a little shaky here. But he's just, a very empathetic person, and from a just even a working point of view, comedians are not very generous. They want the laugh themselves. They don't want to share. They don't want anyone else to get the bigger laugh than them. Howard was the opposite of that. Like we would be in the weekly production meetings, and it was such a joy that Howard would get a kick out of anyone, whether it was an intern or, Jackie making a really good observation or joke in the meeting, and it would crack Howard up. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. And he would share that on the air, which I thought was great. And he's a great, the other thing is I wish people could have listened to him when he was on regular terrestrial radio, K-Rock,
right.
Specifically, or whatever market carried him, because that's a high wire act. This is like a morning disc jockey, right? It wasn't even really talk. It's talk radio, but what is talk radio? To me, talk radio is maybe a throwback to the 50s and 60s when that's all they did on AM. Howard was on a rock and roll station, right? And
right.
He's a morning talk show host who never told you the time, the weather, or the traffic, like all those things that are staples. He
right.
never gave you any of that, didn't play any music, was the number one, and was the number one show in the country, in the markets that he was in. It was incredible.
Yeah. I've always been amazed by his ability from the outside looking in, amazed at his ability to hold that standard, even though he didn't do the things that you just mentioned. Right. Because when you think about morning radio, you think about, it's 8:15 after the hour today. Don't take I-75 south.
Yeah,
that's going to be a little blocked up for you.
Yeah, even the guys who play music, they get all those things in.
Exactly. Yeah, I think because when I think about Howard doing morning shows and weather and all that kind of stuff, my mind instantly goes to the movie Private Parts, where he's got the guy up and he's doing the sound effects of the guy in the chopper.
Yeah.
And I think about that every time, and that was the only time he ever did anything that was traffic weather like related. Was that
was forced on him? That was when he was on NBC. That was the big
NBC. Yeah,
they had the big chopper. The helicopter that every station had their own chopper. It was a big deal.
Yeah, excellent.
With Howard Stern, though, you're credited for putting him on television to compete with Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I know that was such a crazy time. CBS was founded by William Paley. Mm-hmm. And then there was this period of time when Westinghouse owned CBS, and then they spun it off. When I was there was a merger with Infinity, this radio company that Howard Station was on. Mel Karmazin ran it, merged with CBS, and suddenly, I'm like, oh my God, Howard Stern and I work for the same company. That's crazy. And Mel Karmazin, who Howard always talked about, he was the general manager of K-Rock, but he was the guy who ran Infinity, was now becoming one of the top guys of CBS. And I'm like, this is crazy, So I remember seeing Mel, introducing myself at CBS Black Rock, the big headquarters, a famous building, and going, hey, Mel, Vinnie Favale, good to meet you. I've had a late night, big Howard Stern fan. And we got to do something together. That was just something I was saying, I was completely forgetting that I was the head of late night, and that someone else might get the impression that I actually had the ability to deliver on putting Howard Stern on the air. My boss, Leslie Moonves, was the one who had obviously the authority for that. So Mel goes, oh, so nice to meet you. Great. Well, let's have a meeting with Howard. I'm like, what? I was like, oh my God. So let me clear this with my boss, who was great. Leslie was like, no, do it. Let's figure it out. And we met with Howard, and it was amazing. And, Howard he had done the Channel 9 show. That's what people call it. It was a local 11:30 show just in New York, but it was a super station. So in the early days of cable, it was carried throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And it was a great show, extremely low budget. And Howard worked really hard on that. And he said, look, he was doing the E show, which is really just cameras in the radio station, right? So like, well, what's this Saturday show going to be? And we realized my boss at the time, Mitch Semmel, the guy, he and I were the ones who were figuring it out, meeting with Howard. We were like, well, Howard really doesn't want to do anything new or different. So essentially we had to do kind of a version of the E show.
Right.
And I'm like, oh God, we're going to get killed. Like, what are we, like, how are we going to pull this off? Right. Because people were thinking Howard Stern's going up against Saturday Night Live, you know, and it wasn't going to be a network show, but it was almost going to be a network show because it was a syndicated show, and all the CBS stations were going to carry it in pattern at 11:30. So I remember we had this big press conference with Eric the Midget was there in a bunny suit, and a girl named Tiffany in a bikini was there because it was now the Tiffany Network stood for a stripper at Scores and not the Tiffany you think William Kelly meant. And it was crazy. But I remember one of the things that bonded Howard and I, there were a lot of things. We hit it off. And I remember sitting with Howard and we were trying to figure out like he was hip to the fact that we were going to get beat up because we weren't doing anything radically different from the E show. We figured out a way to kind of make it special. We would shoot meetings. It became a little bit more like the Larry David show. But I remember I said, Howard, you know what we should call the TV show? Let's just call it the Howard Stern Radio Show. This way we can't, you know, we're being just really honest. I love that. I love that idea because it really does. It sounds cool. The Howard Stern Radio Show, you know, when it was, it was kind of like some visual things for the opening and Howard behind the microphone and all that. And then, you know, you were there. We weren't making any illusions, but that was a hard show to do because I was working with Letterman at the time and I was doing the Howard Show and I was really hands-on the Howard Show. The Letterman Show, I was kind of there as to support the producers, but also to be there for the network's needs. So there was a lot of negotiating back and forth. I need this, we need that, we need more money for this and that. And I had to be at the taping every night. But the Howard Show was brutal with the censors. You know, I think Howard felt the more over the top he could make the show, the better it would, the more different it would be from E, you know, and so we had like Siamese twins on, and it was just really, people joined at the head. It was crazy. It was intense. There was a lot of things that I tried to help him, you know, get everything he wanted. But, you know, like if you have the KKK guy on, who was a running not a character, he was a real guy. And Howard was brilliant by showing what an idiot he was by letting him just speak freely.
Right.
Well, that doesn't fly on network television or even syndication television, the N-word. You can't say the N-word. And it is actually amazing. I wonder if Howard could get away with that now on K-Rock, because they were liberally using the N-word, again, spouted by an idiot, you know? So stuff like that, you know, Howard pushing back when we needed to bleep, stuff like that. So it was a crazy time, but it was incredible because I got to work with Howard. And then because of that, when you're in Howard's orbit, if you're up for it, you're on the show, you know, you become part of the show because his whole life kind of mirrored whatever happened in his life would be on the show the next day. He'd filter out. It was actually, the thing that was amazing is as open as he was and shared everything with the audience, there were still a lot of things going on behind the scenes with us in the show that he never talked about because he was genuinely angry about things and he didn't want to bring everything up. It was incredible.
Right.
I feel like though his show kind of set the pattern for a lot of modern podcasts and vlogs. And it is kind of you guys set up this is how you can do it. Show people what your life is, show people what it's like inside your studio. And I feel like a lot of us podcasters are following that sort of model because of the show.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at Tim's backdrop over there, you know, like Howard's studio had all these little things, you know, the Jackie puppet and you know the Larry King mugshot, you know, photo there. But there were cool things like audio carts and cool lighting, and it's actually kind of easy to replicate now. You're right. It did invent the long form talk, you know, and it, you know, it's interesting though. Like one of the things I loved about Howard's show too was the phone calls, like the people that would call in, and he would sometimes he would discover the next, whack packer or just, get into really great conversations. And that's the one thing I guess podcasts can't do. Well, they can, but it's like, it's not in real time. The thing about, podcast, unless someone calls me right now when we patch them in, this is just going to be the three of us. So and I guess that's kind of what Clubhouse comes close to that, right? That app where people are just, although that scares me. Like I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Sometimes I just want to hear it and be anonymous, but like, your name shows up. Vinnie Favale is in the room. No, I'm not here. I just want to hear what you guys are doing,
Right. I just want to listen.
I had that for a little while. I don't know. It turned for me, it turned into just either somebody, as a marketing tool for some people or a political tool for other people.
Right.
And I got tired of getting invited to only those types of conversations when I clearly have no interest in either of those types of conversations. And so I just deleted the app. I got tired of it.
Yeah, I same here. Like, and then sometimes like you want to listen, even like I might want to go into one that was on a completely different point of view from mine, because sometimes it's good to know what the enemy's up to,
Right.
So okay, if there's a neo-Nazi clubhouse, I'm kind of fascinated by to hear what these nitpicks are talking about. But now you're in there, your name is in there. God only knows like how it'll probably haunt you.
Right.
Vinnie Favale, we have a screen grab that shows Vinnie Favale in there.
Yeah. God forbids the wrong person see your name in there. And yeah.
And then if you're in there too, they know you're in there, and then you can't like that's a great thing about radio. Like if these nuts are on the radio, I could hear them, I could listen.
Right.
No one knows. And if I want to call up, I'll call up.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the downsides of that app, is that there's not a lot of anonymity, where if you want to go listen to something anonymously, that's not really going to happen. So
but Twitter, the great thing about Twitter is, which I love Twitter, and I don't engage in Twitter. I'm just very, very passive. I follow a great, great cross section of people, and sometimes the poison gets in. But I even want to know what Scott Baio's thinking about, because it's like, what is happening here? No, it is fascinating. It's like, it was actually disappointing. In some cases, like one of my favorite bands was the Raspberries. Great, early 70s power pop outfit, like up there with Badfinger, post Beatles, the best. And then it's like, Eric Carmen's like just a raging, supporter of things that I am not into, and I'm like, okay, I got to separate the politics from, and so that's just a case of knowing too much.
Right. But that becomes difficult too, though, when it's somebody that you want to follow. Because you like all these other things by them, but then there's this one glaring huge thing, and you go, I don't know if I can get with that.
And it becomes a distraction, and then you're like, oh geez, okay, let's try to forget that one.
Right.
And Facebook does it too, just on a personal level. Sometimes you're finding things way too much about friends that I like them the way I think I remember them. I don't need to know all that other stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
I do that every once in a while. I look up people that I went to high school with, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, there was a reason why I didn't talk with you.
That reunion. I'll skip that one.
Exactly.
Oh,
I didn't talk with you then.
I was so happy. My 10-year reunion was in 2020, and oh darn, there was a global pandemic.
What am I gonna do?
Oh no!
Oh, shucky darn it!
Yeah. I can't go see you guys. Didn't like you then. I don't like you now. So
it was an easy pass.
It was.
All right. So Vinnie, you've been part of 3 different podcasts. We were talking about how, Howard's show kind of led into the world of podcasting, but you've been a part of 3 different podcasts as the host currently of 3 podcasts, host, co-host. I certainly respect the amount of effort that goes into that. Now, one of them was a one-off like radio style mystery.
Oh my God, episode. That one, let me tell you something. That was so great. I think I invented Serial. I did that before Serial existed. The podcast. The mystery of Don Val, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Yeah, so you had that one. Of course, you have the one that you co-hosted with Art Bell.
Yeah.
As the co-founders of Comedy Central, called Constant Comedy.
Yes.
And then there was the third one, which I was the most interested in about. Not that I wasn't interested in your show with Art as well, but I am a Beatles fan, and so to have one that was Beatles themed, I thought was really cool. Now, there's a Beatles fandom here with both Kathleen and I, and their influence on pop culture is undeniable. It's huge. But what was it about? Yeah, exactly. Right. But what was it about their music that made you want to deep dive into their library of songs and do a show dedicated to their music and their influence on pop culture?
Yeah, well, the one that you're referring to, it's funny because everybody, I currently listen to, I think, 15 different Beatles podcasts. There's so many. Something About the Beatles is a great one. Mm-hmm. So there's more than enough out there. And this one, actually, I did this. The one that we're talking about is called Beatlesque, right?
There it is.
Right?
Yeah.
Meet the Beatlesque, right? So I said, okay, what can I bring to the table? And I did this actually before podcasting. I did it for an old website where I just put it on an audio player. There wasn't even, you could listen to it through the browser. So I said, well, what can I bring to the table? And then I'm just like, there were two that I actually were working on. One was Beatles cover versions. There are thousands of versions of Beatles songs, like Bing Crosby doing "Hey Jude," which is unbelievable. Some so bad they're good, some that are interesting. But I wanted to focus on Beatlesque because I remember when I was a kid, my brother would always used to make fun of me when I come home with a new record from EJ Corvettes. It's like, oh, you don't love these guys. They sound just like the Beatles. I didn't even know the word Beatlesque, but that would inform all my musical passions. Like, the Beatles did a lot of music, 200 some odd songs, 12 albums, but I wanted more. And that's why I fell in love with XTC and 10cc and Badfinger and the Pez Band and Photomaker. And the early 70s were a time of that. But even now, there's still music coming out that's Beatlesque. And sometimes the band's just got one song in their canon that's Beatlesque. That's all I care about. So I did, I think, 7 episodes. I have maybe 100 more songs that I need to do. I just have to find the time because, as you guys know, it's just so time consuming to just.
What's time?
Yeah, what is time? But I love Beatles. I love jangly guitars. I love all the hallmarks of the Beatles songs.
Right.
The harmonies. It's great. There's one of my favorite. I'm actually working on a book right now that I think you guys will love when it comes out. It's called "Do You Hear What I Hear?" And it's the history of Christmas music going back from the 17th century to now.
Interesting. Okay.
I am doing like a deep dive. It is. I did the math of it, and it's like 300, almost 300 songs. Songs that you all know. The majority of them, but the history behind them and the cover versions. And this is the prototype of the cover of the book.
Okay, cool.
But one of my favorite Christmas albums is by a Swedish band who covered 12 great Christmas songs, but as if they were the Beatles. And it's unbelievable. It's they're called the Rubber Band. And it just goes to show you that, like, how that you could, they do it so easily. And you're listening to Last Christmas by Wham, but it starts off sounding like the Beatles doing Please Mr. Postman. It's crazy. So their influence is wide. I just wanted to put something out in the world just to collect these things, because a lot of these songs are just lost to time. People, they just don't know it. But there are a lot of people like us, like the three of us, that really love anything that's Beatles related.
Yeah.
So here's something I got to ask you if you've seen or not. So are you familiar with the James Corden show?
Yeah.
Have you watched any of that?
Oh yeah. We launched. I mean, I wasn't a part of it, but I was at CBS when that went on the air.
Okay. Yeah. So he does a portion of his show where he it's called Carpool Karaoke.
Yep.
Have you seen the one with Paul McCartney?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, you're not a fan of it because he was singing. Did you like it? Or people were
I loved
complaining
it.
that he was singing too, that James Corden was singing too
I
much.
could care less about that.
Yeah.
You know what?
It was great.
I enjoyed the whole thing. And honestly, I was watching it and I've said this before in other interviews, and we've talked about this particular episode of Carpool Karaoke. When they get to the end there at that little bar, you know, and he goes up on stage and starts performing, and all these people realize what's going on. I got choked up for these people because, well, A, I was jealous of the fact that they were there and I wasn't, and B, so, you know, also so very happy for them that they were getting a chance to live out, for many of them, what was a childhood fantasy, to be able to see the Beatles, but they maybe got to it too late, you know.
That was in Liverpool,
Shea Stadium. Yeah, exactly.
Liverpool. That was if he had done that in Kansas, I would have been pissed off. You know, it's like,
right.
Okay, Liverpool deserves that at the very least.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So
yeah, that was great. I got choked up on the Get Back film. That was overwhelming. The one that was really on Apple Plus. That was
I've been watching that.
That was really emotional because, like, here they are, you know, it just took me back to, I was a kid at the time, but it just, I felt like, oh, I'm in the room. It's like 1970s, you know, my brothers are alive and everything is great. You know, my parents are, you start thinking about like, okay, this is that time. Cause I remember my older brother, he's the one that turned me on to the Beatles, you know, because he was of the age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that. Okay.
It's funny how older siblings have that effect on you.
The power that they have. They have the power to give you wedgies and noogies and turn you on to
trees until your parents get home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, your brother helped you get interested in the Beatles. Mine tried to get me interested in Poison and Motley Crue. I think you win.
Oh, so. Wow. Look at you. You survived. You survived Poison.
Exactly.
My older brother introduced me to 3 Days Grace, Avenged Sevenfold, and Bowling for Soup. So.
Oh no! Oh God! Yeah. I mean, what would you call that music? Like, what genre is that? Like,
well, rock? I mean, like Bowling for Soup is Bowling for Soup is more punk rock, but the rest of it's alt rock, definitely.
I would call Bowling for Soup pop punk.
Pop punk. Yeah, that was. There was some good stuff.
Kathleen, don't purse your lips at me. You're like,
what would we call Sugar Ray?
Sugar Ray. I would call that a change channel.
You know what? But they for a while, for like 3 or 4 summers in a row, they had a good summer song. Like, I mean, you know what the funny thing about them is that their first album is nothing like anything that. It's like after their first album, they found out what was radio friendly, right,
and what was, and God bless them, they figured out what was going to sell them some records. You know, good on them.
What was that first album?
Good on them.
The first album was "I Just Want to Fly," right?
No. Oh, that was the first one I think that was popular. Yeah, it was.
Oh, really? So did the first album have any hits at all?
The only reason why I checked it out was because it's called Sugar Lemonade and Sugar or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember the actual title of the album. So if Mark McGrath ever hears this, sorry, I slaughtered that. But secondly, there's a song on there called Danzig Just Needs a Hug. And so growing up around a lot of hard rock and everything. So Danzig was is a hard rock band. It was called black rock, because it was, a little on the dark side of things. They had some, some of their songs that were considered to have some spiritistic overtones. And so, but the lead singer, Glenn Danzig, always looks mean and angry and all this stuff. And so when I saw the title, Danzig Just Needs a Hug, of course I had to go listen to it because, I knew who Danzig was. And I'm like, oh yeah, he probably does just need a hug. He's grumpy.
And where are they now? So what is Sugar Ray doing now?
Actually, I think Mark McGrath is also, he's doing something on, he's host a radio show on Sirius.
Yeah, and then he was doing some TV. You know whose first album I loved? Smash Mouth. Mm-hmm. I thought Walking on the Sun was such a great song, and then, and then I don't know what, I mean, look, they had a lot of hits, but I don't know how to, I like classifying things. Yeah, that's why I love the 60s and the 70s.
Right,
this is disco, this is metal, this is punk now. Oh, this is new wave. I get all that. Now, I don't know what any of this is. I lost track of the 90s, I think.
Meh. Everybody lost track of stuff in the 90s. It's okay.
I'm still tracking stuff from the 90s. We're good.
I was okay until
that's my
somebody
era.
said 40
That's my
years ago
jam.
the other day. And I'm like, oh yeah, 40 years ago. That was 1982.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok the other day. They're like, respectfully, if you were born in the 1900s, I'm like, you need to shut your dirty mouth.
Oh my God.
I'm like, you make it sound like we're ancient, you know?
Yeah.
I get enough of that from Kathleen. So
Well, okay, so I only do that to you because it's hilarious. But yesterday we got one of those stupid robocalls and I answered it. And it was one of my agents will call you in the next 48 hours to give you information about your end life insurance and your final benefits and expenses. And I'm like, okay, so I know that turning 30 is scary, but I didn't think I needed final expenses insurance. And this guy laughed so hard, he dropped his phone.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then hung up on me. And I'm like,
that's great.
I'm like, way to try to scam me. And then you are laughing so hard about the girl who's like, but I'm only 30. I don't need final expenses insurance.
How sad was it during COVID? Like watching too much daytime TV and Tom Selleck with the reverse mortgages. I'm like, now he does that thing. It's like, now this is not just some kind of scam. And then he does the little laugh to like,
sure, it's
cover
not.
that. Of course, it's
this
a
isn't
scam.
a scam, but it is.
Everything is a scam.
Almost needed to do it like a Jedi hand wave. You don't notice me. This is not a scam.
I am not cheating you out of your money. Yeah.
Exactly.
So rewinding a bit, talking about your musical, it's available on your website and on Bandcamp. The
soundtrack's on Bandcamp, and there's HereAfterMusical.com has got a ton of stuff on there. A lot of video. There's a YouTube channel too with all that stuff.
So if you could go back and tell your younger self about all of the things that you've done, about your musical, about working on television, do you think that you would believe you?
No way. No way. No way. I wrote a piece. It's at VinnieFavale.com. This year speaking of 40, is the 40th anniversary of me being on Letterman, doing stand-up on Letterman, 1982. And that was such an amazing year for me because it was my first job working. I was like living with my parents, I went to Catholic school for 9 years. And then I went to a trade school, a trade school where you go because there's no other choice in life. And I was afraid of electricity. I was taking electrical engineering and I was afraid of electricity. So like when I went into college, I had like zero academics because the trade school does not stresses very little other than the trade. There was no languages. There's really not math, English, history, nothing. So I was a total rube going into college, and just luck. I got a job right out of college working for WNBC, working in 30 Rock. So at the time it's happening, it all felt like a dream. Like, I can't believe, like I used to, watch Johnny Carson and when his show was coming from 30 Rock, where Fallon does the show now. And now I'm in those halls and I'm watching David Letterman, whose office was next to mine because his morning show was canceled and he was in limbo. So he hadn't even launched this 12:30 show, but I'm like, I used to see him in the hallways. We see each other and we used to both watch Howard Stern do his radio show behind the glass, just like in the Private Parts movie. That's the way it was. And I remember like, he used to be on Carson. Like he was like one of Carson's favorite guests. So yeah, to answer your question, no way. I still don't believe it. Actually, it still feels like a dream. And I as close as I got to all of that, there were some days, it was pretty heady times where like I was sitting in with Howard in the morning and then I was going to Letterman in the afternoon and they put me in a comedy piece. So there were more than a few days where it's like, wow, I'm on Howard Stern show and I'm on David Letterman tonight. And it was incredible. But sometimes like you don't want to see how the steak gets made and it's not fun. A lot of times it's not fun. There is a lot of tension, especially with what I had to deal with in my job, making sure that Letterman had all the things he needed from the network and his people, and sometimes things didn't go their way, and I'd see an angry side of them, and they were justified in being angry,
Right.
and I'd see Howard upset at things justifiably, and I'm like, oh, it's so much more fun when you're just listening, from the comfort of your headphones or watching from home,
Right.
But it never hurt my enjoyment of their show. Even now, I still I wish Dave was still doing a version of his show. I mean, but I remain a fan. And actually, David Letterman just launched a YouTube channel, which is great, which is now you could actually,
nice.
He did it in conjunction with NBC. So Letterman owns all the CBS shows from 94 to when he went off the air, and NBC owned all the NBC shows, but they merged. And so this channel is fantastic. It's just high quality, versions of all the great interviews and things, and they're rolling it out every day. There's something new on there, so
that's cool.
So yeah, it's been a great career. I'm very proud of it.
You should be. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, Vinnie, we have one final question for you. We like to call it our silly question.
Okay.
So you can answer this as serious or silly as you like.
Okay.
All right. What is one thing that you wish existed but doesn't at the moment?
You just blew my mind.
Sweet.
Everything does exist right now. I wish that I could, I wish there was technology that allowed me to scroll with my eyes through my Twitter feed, not my hand. So instead of doing this, I could just look and go.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
I think that's coming.
Yeah.
Has to.
All my dreams will come true then.
There you go.
I could go for a teleport. A teleport would be nice.
Oh wait, teleport like time travel?
Mm-hmm.
Or teleport like you could just go to from one place.
Like just an instantaneous teleport. Like I can stand on it. I can push a button, and then I'm at my mom's house instead of a 3-hour
Okay, so
drive.
that's not time. Not time travel. Just that's probably more realistic than time travel. Where I'd like to go back 50 years ago, which would be cool. But I think like Star Trek, right? Where you just beam me up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that's doable ever?
Probably not. But
no, I think you're going to have some human soup for a while before that
really?
actually.
But what if there's a version of that? Like what if they could figure out a way to do a holography of you at I guess the benefit of that would be your mom, not you, because you would still be here. But if that holography of you were at your mom's, and it just like it was synced up with you the way our watches are synced up with our phones, and every time they talk, like it's like your mom's on the phone with you, only you're there. How cool would that be?
That would be cool.
See, that's doable. Let's work on that.
That would be nice.
That could probably
podcast.
Yeah, that could probably happen in a virtual reality world if you're both inside of the virtual reality and able to interact.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a Ready Player One vibes.
Yeah, like if your mom had this thing, she says, "Oh, I want to talk to Kathleen," and you manifested there, and it's whatever wardrobe that you picked for that, and it's sitting on the couch, and you're at home. You could be in your pajamas, but you're like talking to your mom because you have an earpiece and you can hear everything. Wow,
that would be really cool.
I just blew my own mind.
There you go.
The 3-hour drive. Great. Vinnie, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Oh, thanks. This is fun, guys. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Definitely. So where can our viewers and our listeners go to find out more about your work and what you've got coming out?
I guess the best place is VinnieFavale.com. And that's got like links to everything I've done. I blog a lot, and it's got all my HereAfter stuff as well.
Awesome. We will definitely link your website.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. I want to remind everybody that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to ensure that we get more amazing guests, like, of course, Vinnie Favale here today, have these conversations with, and get more funny moments for you guys to be able to listen to. So please subscribe. It helps us more than we can ever really tell you. And be sure to go to VinnieFavale.com to check out more information about Vinnie, his work, and everything he's going to be up to. And remember, kids, pop culture is all around you. It influences everything we do in life, every part of our lives. So be sure to come back here next week. We'll have your next fix waiting right here for you on Pop Culture Addicts.
Thanks again, Vinnie.
Bye-bye, guys. Take care. That was fun.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF Popcast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSFPopcast, or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the Contact Me link. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the episode.